I never thought my own sister would destroy my life, but looking back, I should have seen the signs. I'm Jason, 26 now, but this nightmare started when I was finishing my final year of medical school in Boston. I was completely focused on completing my residency applications and maintaining my grades while working part-time at the university hospital. The pressure was intense, but I was managing it all, determined to become the first doctor in our family. My sister Rachel, 3 years older than me, had just gone through a messy divorce and moved back home with her daughter Emma, who was 6 at the time. Our parents immediately converted Dad's home office into a bedroom for Emma and welcomed them both with open arms. Growing up, Rachel and I had been close despite the age difference. She always protected me from bullies at school and included me in her friend groups whenever possible. But everything changed when she got pregnant at 19 and rushed into marriage with her high school boyfriend. After dropping out of college to become a full-time mom, I rarely saw her except during major holidays and family gatherings. When Rachel moved back home after her divorce, I genuinely tried to reconnect with her. I would watch Emma whenever Rachel needed to attend job interviews or run errands. I invited her to join me and my friends on weekends, thinking it might help her adjust to single life again. I even helped her create a dating profile when she mentioned feeling ready to meet someone new. Despite my efforts, something felt off about her behavior. She seemed unusually bitter and would get this strange expression whenever I talked about my medical career or future plans. Looking back, there were countless red flags I completely missed. She became defensive whenever our parents asked about her job search progress. She would disappear for hours on weekends claiming to be at the library, applying for positions but return with zero updates. And she guarded her phone like it contained state secrets, always keeping it locked and away from everyone else, which was new behavior for her. I didn't think much about these warning signs at the time. I assumed she was just dealing with post-divorce stress and the challenges of single parenthood. I was too preoccupied with my own responsibilities, finishing med school, working at the hospital, and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life with what little free time I had left. But there were moments that should have alerted me. I'd occasionally catch her giving me these odd looks when our parents complimented my academic achievements. Once, I overheard her on the phone saying something like, "He's always been the golden child, but not for much longer." I was pretty sure she was talking about me, which made absolutely no sense since I was working incredibly hard for everything I had accomplished. Still, I brushed it off as temporary resentment that would eventually pass. The situation grew stranger when I started noticing small amounts of money missing from my wallet. At first, I thought I was just being careless with my spending, but then I caught Rachel coming out of my room one day when I returned home early from clinical rotations. She claimed she was borrowing a tie for a job interview, but her hands were empty. After that incident, I began hiding my wallet, though I never confronted her about it. I didn't want to create family drama when everyone finally seemed to be getting along again. About a week before everything fell apart, Rachel asked me to take Emma for the entire weekend because she had promising job interviews in New York. I agreed despite having a major research paper due, and Emma and I had a wonderful time together. When Rachel returned Sunday night, she was sporting a new designer handbag and shoes. When I casually asked how the interviews went, she gave vague answers and quickly changed the subject. Then came that fateful Sunday morning that changed everything. I had worked the night shift at the hospital and was sleeping in. Around 9 a.m. I was jolted awake by shouting downstairs. At first, I thought Emma might be having a tantrum, but then I heard my mother crying and my father yelling. I rushed downstairs in my pajamas to find my mother collapsed in her chair, sobbing uncontrollably while my father's face was flushed with anger as he shouted at Rachel. She was showing them something on her phone with this disturbing look of satisfaction on her face. When they noticed me, my mother cried harder, and my father looked at me with such disgust that it made me physically ill. Rachel claimed she had found evidence that I had been stealing money from our parents for months to pay for my tuition and weekend partying. She showed them screenshots of what appeared to be bank transfers to my account and receipts with my name on them. I stood there in complete shock as they all stared at me. My heart was pounding so fast I could barely breathe. "What is this?" my father demanded, his voice trembling with rage as he pointed at the phone. $50,000 missing from our retirement account, I stammered, trying to comprehend what was happening. "I don't understand." Rachel stepped forward with a slight smirk. "I found something while using Mom's iPad. All these transfers to your account. Want to explain?" My stomach dropped as I glanced at the screen. The evidence looked convincing. Bank transfers with my name, dates, amounts, and even what appeared to be text messages from me confessing to taking the money. "That's completely fabricated," I practically shouted. "I never took any money from you. Those aren't even my messages." My mother wouldn't even look at me. She just sat there sobbing. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered. "Mom, I didn't. I swear on my life," I pleaded, tears welling in my eyes. "This isn't happening. This is all fake. Please, you have to believe me." My father's face was contorted with anger and disappointment. $50,000 of our retirement savings. Your own parents. His voice cracked slightly, which somehow hurt worse than if he had continued yelling at me. I frantically pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. "Look, here are my bank statements. There are no deposits like that. You can see everything." Before my parents could even glance at my phone, Rachel shrugged casually and said, "He probably has a secret account we don't know about." That's what I would do. The calculated way she said it made my blood run cold, but my parents weren't seeing through her act. They were blinded by their own shock and hurt. "I can't believe you'd betray the family like this," my father said, his voice now dangerously low. I was crying openly at this point, desperate for them to just listen. "Please, just call the bank. Check your actual statements. This isn't real. Why won't you at least investigate before believing the worst about me?" My mother still wouldn't meet my eyes. She just kept mumbling through her tears. "I raised a thief. What will people think?" My father pointed toward the stairs, his hand visibly shaking. "You have 2 hours to pack your things and get out. No son of mine would steal from his own parents." I begged, my voice breaking. "Dad, please!" "Mom, you've known me my whole life. Have I ever given you any reason not to trust me? Can we just talk about this?" But it was like talking to strangers. My mother turned away completely, unable to even look at me. My father simply repeated, 2 hours, not a minute more, before walking out of the room. I stood there sobbing, watching my entire life crumble around me. Through my tears, I could see Rachel observing the whole scene with that satisfied smile, like she had just won some sick game I didn't even know we were playing. In desperation, I called my best friend Alex, who came over immediately to help me pack. I could only take what would fit in 2 suitcases, mostly clothes and important documents like my birth certificate, passport, and medical school paperwork. As I was leaving, Rachel had the audacity to hug me and whisper, "Don't worry about Emma. I'll make sure she's well taken care of." The way she said it made my skin crawl, but I was too devastated to process what she might have meant. After my parents kicked me out, Alex and his parents let me stay in their guest room while I figured things out. My parents blocked my number, email, and social media accounts immediately. Who does that to their own child without even properly investigating? Rachel took it even further and spread the story throughout our extended family. Within days, I was receiving horrible messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins calling me a thief and expressing their profound disappointment in me. My uncle even messaged saying I should be ashamed of myself for stealing from people who had given me everything. It felt like a coordinated witch hunt with Rachel as the ringleader. Only my grandmother stood by me. She straight up told my parents she didn't believe Rachel's lies because she knew what kind of person I truly was. My parents threatened to cut contact with her if she helped me, but she still secretly visited and sometimes brought groceries and home-cooked meals. Grandma's unwavering support was the only thing that kept me going during those dark days. The timing of this catastrophe couldn't have been worse. I was in my final semester with board exams approaching and clinical rotations in full swing. Somehow I had to find a place to live and work enough hours to support myself while completing my medical degree. There were countless nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering what I had ever done to deserve such a calculated betrayal from my own sister. What hurt the most was how quickly my parents had turned against me without even the benefit of doubt. Alex's parents helped me secure an apartment by co-signing the lease since I had limited credit history. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, sometimes working 60-plus hours a week while completing my clinical rotations. I was constantly exhausted but had no choice. I needed to eat and pay rent somehow. The worst part was realizing all the small things I had taken for granted while living at home. I didn't have basic household items like a can opener or enough towels or sheets for my bed. I was so broke that I survived on hospital cafeteria leftovers and ramen noodles for weeks at a time. I lost nearly 20 pounds that first month from stress and poor nutrition. Thankfully, my professors were understanding when I explained my situation. My clinical supervisor allowed me to adjust my schedule to accommodate more hospital shifts, and one of my mentors even let me use the department's printer for free when I needed to submit assignments because I couldn't afford my own printer. These small acts of kindness from people who barely knew me kept me going when my own family had abandoned me. I graduated from medical school 6 months later. My parents and Rachel didn't attend, obviously. My grandmother came early to avoid seeing them, and Alex's entire family showed up to cheer for me. Their support meant everything, but it still hurt watching all my classmates celebrating with their proud parents while I stood there with my makeshift family. I secured a residency position at a prestigious hospital in Chicago, far away from Boston and the painful memories. The salary was enough that I could finally afford more than just ramen and rent. I even purchased a used car, a 2008 Honda Accord with 175,000 miles on it. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it represented my hard-earned independence. About a month after I moved to Chicago, something unexpected happened. My grandmother called with shocking news. Rachel had suddenly disappeared. According to my grandmother, Rachel had told my parents she had found an amazing job opportunity in California and would send for Emma once she was settled. She took most of her belongings, but left Emma behind with my parents. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Rachel would occasionally call with excuses about why she couldn't send for Emma yet. The apartment fell through. The job wasn't as stable as she thought. She needed to find a good school district first. There was always some reason why she couldn't take her daughter back. That's when I realized what she had meant when she whispered, "Don't worry about Emma. I'll make sure she's well taken care of," as I was leaving. She had been planning to abandon her child with my parents all along. She just needed me out of the way first, so they would have no choice but to take care of Emma. My grandmother told me my parents were completely overwhelmed trying to raise a 6-year-old again. My father was close to retirement, and my mother had her volunteer work and book club activities. They weren't prepared to be full-time guardians to a kindergartner, but they stepped up, because what else could they do? I felt terrible for Emma. None of this was her fault, yet she had lost both her father through the divorce, and now her mother had essentially abandoned her. She lost me too, her uncle who she had been really close with. Sometimes during my days off, I would drive past my parents' house just hoping to catch a glimpse of her playing outside. I never got out of the car, though, too afraid of a confrontation with my parents. Despite everything that had happened, I graduated from medical school on time. As I mentioned, no family was there except for my grandmother, who came early to avoid seeing my parents. Alex and his family cheered extra loudly to compensate, but it still hurt seeing everyone else taking family photos while I stood alone with my makeshift support system. I began my residency in emergency medicine at the Chicago hospital, throwing myself completely into my work. The long, demanding hours actually helped keep my mind off the pain of family betrayal. I made new friends at the hospital, started dating again, and was finally beginning to feel like I had my life together when something unexpected happened. I met Sarah, a pediatric nurse who worked in the same hospital. She was treating a young patient I had diagnosed with a rare condition, and we ended up consulting on the case together. She had this incredible way with the scared little boy, making him laugh even as she inserted an IV line. I was impressed by her combination of technical skill and genuine compassion. When she asked for my number after our shift to discuss the patient's care plan, I actually thought she was just being professional. But she called the next day and asked if I wanted to grab coffee before our next shift. We hit it off immediately. She was easy to talk to, wickedly smart, and made me laugh even after the most exhausting shifts. I was hesitant to tell her about my family situation. Most people run for the hills when they hear the word drama. But about 3 months into dating, it came up naturally when she asked about my childhood. I gave her the condensed version. Sister framed me for theft. Parents kicked me out without investigating. Sister abandoned her child with them. Instead of backing away slowly, Sarah was furious on my behalf. She couldn't comprehend how parents could evict their child without even verifying such serious accusations. If someone accused my kid of something that severe, I'd at least check the bank statements before making them homeless, she said indignantly. Her reaction validated my feelings in a way nothing else had before. Maybe I wasn't crazy for still feeling hurt and angry. Maybe what my parents did really was as unforgivable as it felt to me. Dating Sarah brought a stability to my life I hadn't experienced since before the betrayal. After dating for about 8 months, Sarah suggested I try to reconnect with Emma. She could tell how much I missed my niece from the way I talked about her and the pain in my eyes whenever I mentioned her name. I was terrified at the prospect. Seeing Emma meant potentially encountering my parents, and I wasn't sure I was emotionally prepared for that confrontation. But Sarah had a brilliant idea. She suggested I reach out to my grandmother and see if she could arrange a meeting at a neutral location, like a park or ice cream shop. My grandmother was thrilled with this plan. She had been trying to convince me to reconnect with Emma for months, saying the poor child asked about me constantly. A week later, my grandmother took Emma to a local ice cream parlor in Chicago. She had flown in specially for this and texted me when they arrived. I was so nervous I nearly threw up in the parking lot. Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly and said, "You've got this. It's just a little girl who loves you." When I walked into the ice cream shop and Emma spotted me, she screamed with delight and ran straight into my arms. She was 7 by then and had grown so much taller. She talked excitedly about school, her friends, and her new light-up sneakers, speaking so rapidly I could barely keep up. I tried not to cry but failed miserably. This precious child who I loved so much had been collateral damage in her mother's selfish schemes. Emma was equally excited to meet Sarah, immediately showing her all her stickers and asking if she liked dinosaurs. Sarah, being perfect as always, enthusiastically discussed different dinosaur species with her. By the end of our ice cream date, Emma was calling her Aunt Sarah, which gave us both some complicated feelings to process later. As we were preparing to leave, Emma asked when she could see me again. I looked at my grandmother, unsure how to respond. Grandma suggested perhaps we could arrange this again the following weekend. I agreed immediately, and Emma made me pinky promise I wouldn't disappear again. That pinky promise changed everything for me. I realized I couldn't continue avoiding my parents if it meant missing out on Emma's life. She had already been abandoned by her mother. She didn't need her uncle vanishing from her life, too. So I made a difficult decision and texted my father that evening. "I want to see Emma regularly. I'm willing to coordinate pickups and drop-offs directly with you if you're agreeable." His response came almost immediately. "We should talk in person. Come for dinner tomorrow." I stared at my phone for a long time, my heart racing. Dinner at their house? Was I ready for that level of interaction? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would do anything for that little girl, even face the people who had thrown me away without a second thought or the benefit of doubt. Sarah offered to come with me for moral support, but I felt this was something I needed to handle alone. I was a complete nervous wreck driving to my parents' house the next evening. I nearly turned around at least 3 times, and when I finally arrived, I sat in my car for almost 15 minutes trying to calm my racing heart. There was something profoundly surreal about ringing the doorbell at the house where I had grown up. My mother answered, looking noticeably older, even though it had only been about 2 years. She reached out to hug me, but I stepped back, not ready for that level of physical contact. She looked hurt, but tried to mask it with a smile. "Emma's been excited all day knowing you were coming," she said, as if that was the only reason I was there, which, truthfully, it was. Emma came racing down the stairs and tackled me with a hug that nearly knocked me over. That little monkey had the strength of a linebacker with her enthusiasm. My father emerged from the kitchen, looking deeply uncomfortable. He attempted casual conversation. "Dinner's almost ready." The strangest part was how they were acting like this was just a normal family dinner, as if they hadn't kicked me out and cut off all contact, as if they hadn't blocked my number and social media accounts, as if they hadn't believed the absolute worst about me without a shred of evidence. We sat down to eat, and my parents started with small talk about the weather and local news. I gave brief, non-committal answers and focused my attention on Emma, who was enthusiastically telling me about her science project on the solar system. Finally, after dinner, when Emma went to watch TV in the living room, my mother brought out coffee, and my father cleared his throat. "Here we go," I thought to myself. "We want you to be part of Emma's life again," he said formally. "She misses you terribly." I nodded silently. "That's why I'm here, for her." My mother jumped in eagerly. "We've been thinking maybe you could take her sometimes on weekends. Give us a little break. It's been quite challenging raising a young child at our age." I nearly laughed out loud at the audacity. They weren't asking me here to reconcile or apologize. They wanted a babysitter to relieve their burden. "So you want me to help with Emma?" I said slowly, controlling my anger. "But we're not going to address what happened? About how you threw me out without even checking if Rachel's accusations were true." My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "That was a difficult time for everyone. Especially for me," I cut in sharply. "I was homeless during finals week. I was working double shifts while completing clinical rotations. I lost weight because I couldn't afford food. All because you couldn't be bothered to verify something before destroying my life." My mother's eyes immediately welled up with tears. Her classic move: cry so everyone focuses on comforting you instead of holding you accountable for your actions. "We made a mistake," my father finally admitted. "We should have looked into it more thoroughly, but you have to understand the evidence seemed very convincing at the time." I shook my head firmly. "No, I don't have to understand that. Parents are supposed to believe in their children, or at the very least, give them the benefit of the doubt. You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself." "What do you want from us?" my mother asked, sounding frustrated. "We're admitting we were wrong. What more do you want?" I realized in that moment that they simply didn't get it. They thought saying, "we made a mistake," was equivalent to a genuine apology. They thought I should just move forward, because they were now willing to have me back in their lives, as if I should be grateful for the opportunity to re-enter the family that had discarded me so easily. "I want to be part of Emma's life," I stated firmly. "I'll take her some weekends, but let's be clear. I'm doing this for her, not for you. This isn't reconciliation. This is me being there for a little girl who deserves better than what she's gotten from this family." The hurt expressions on their faces would have bothered me once. Now I just felt emotionally drained. We worked out a schedule where I'd pick Emma up every other Saturday morning and bring her back Sunday evening. As I was leaving, my father tried one last time. "We're still your parents," he said quietly. "We still love you." I looked him directly in the eye and replied, "Parents don't do what you did. Love doesn't act the way you acted." Then I left, got in my car, and cried the entire drive back to my apartment. Sarah was waiting for me with ice cream and a shoulder to cry on. After I recounted the entire conversation, she said something that really resonated with me. "You know, you can have a relationship with Emma without having one with them. You're an adult now. You get to decide what kind of contact you have with people who hurt you, even if they're family." She was absolutely right. And that's exactly what I did over the next several months. I would text my parents only about Emma logistics, pickup times, drop-offs, things she needed for our weekends together. Otherwise, I maintained emotional distance. No family dinners, no holiday gatherings, just brief hellos and goodbyes at the door. About 6 months into this arrangement, I took Sarah on a weekend getaway to a beautiful lakeside cabin in Michigan. We were hiking along the shoreline at sunset when I got down on one knee and proposed. When I called Alex to share the news, he shouted so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. When I told my grandmother, she cried tears of joy and said she'd been praying I'd find someone who valued me properly after everything my family had put me through. I decided to tell my parents about the engagement during an Emma pickup. When I arrived that Saturday, my mother immediately noticed the ring on Sarah's finger. "You're engaged?" she asked, obviously surprised. I confirmed that I had proposed the previous weekend and we were planning a summer wedding. My father offered stiff congratulations. "She seems like a nice young woman." As I gathered Emma's things for our weekend together, my mother suggested a family dinner to celebrate our engagement. I ignored the invitation and left without responding. That night, as Emma was helping Sarah make homemade pizza in our kitchen, she asked innocently, "Now that you're getting married, will you be my mom instead of just my aunt?" My heart ached at her question. "I'll always be your uncle, sweetheart, and Sarah will be your aunt for real. We'll be your family forever, no matter what," I promised her. She seemed satisfied with my answer, but her question lingered in my mind long after she fell asleep. Sarah and I had a long conversation that night and agreed that regardless of what happened with my parents, Emma would always have a stable, loving home with us. We had no idea that things were about to get much more complicated. Just as we were settling into our routine with Emma and planning our wedding, everything exploded again. It started with a text from my cousin Jake. We'd been close growing up but had drifted apart after I was kicked out. He had initially sided with my parents but tried to apologize once he realized I might be innocent. I'd been polite but distant whenever he reached out. His text read simply, "You need to see this. Call me ASAP." I was in the middle of a busy shift at the hospital and ignored it at first. Then he sent another message. "Seriously, it's about Rachel. You need to see this now." That got my attention immediately. I called him during my lunch break. "Have you been on Facebook today?" he asked without even saying hello. "No, why?" I replied cautiously. Rachel's friend Tasha had a complete meltdown online. She posted screenshots of text conversations with Rachel from 2 years ago about you, about what she did to you. "It's bad, Jason. Really bad." My heart started racing as Jake explained further. I went to the hospital bathroom and locked myself in a stall before opening the links he had sent. What I saw made me physically ill. Tasha had posted a series of screenshots showing text conversations with Rachel from around the time I was kicked out. There was Rachel openly admitting she had photoshopped fake bank statements to frame me for stealing money. She bragged about creating fake text messages where I supposedly confessed. She explicitly stated she was planning to abandon Emma with our parents once I was out of the picture. And most disturbing of all, she laughed about how easily my parents had believed her accusations without checking anything. It was all there in black and white, proof of her calculated betrayal. The most damning message read, "Parents totally bought it, LOL. They kicked him out same day, didn't even check the bank records or anything. Now I just need to set up my escape plan and I'll be free of all this family burden." I sat on that cold bathroom floor for what felt like hours, shaking uncontrollably. Here it was, proof of what I had known all along. Rachel had deliberately framed me to get me out of the way so she could abandon Emma with our parents. By the time I walked out of that bathroom, my phone was exploding with notifications. Other cousins, aunts, and uncles had all seen the screenshots. They were sending messages of support and shock. The same people who had called me a thief 2 years earlier were now falling over themselves to say they had always known something wasn't right about Rachel's story. The hypocrisy was almost as painful as the original betrayal. I left work early, too rattled to focus on patients. When I got home, I found Sarah, normally the calmest person I know, absolutely livid after seeing the screenshots that were now circulating through all my social media. "You need to send these to your parents," she insisted. "They need to see exactly what she did." I hesitated, conflicted about how to proceed. Part of me wanted to forward everything to my parents, to force them to face the undeniable truth of their daughter's manipulation. But another part was afraid of what would happen next. Would they expect immediate forgiveness now? Would they think this proof somehow erased what they had done to me? Before I could decide, my phone rang. It was my father. "Have you seen what's going around online?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes," I said simply, offering nothing more. "We need to talk," he continued. "Can you come over?" I sighed heavily. "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "Please," he said, and his voice broke slightly. "We need to discuss this in person." Against my better judgment, and with Sarah insisting on accompanying me for support, I agreed to meet my parents at their house that evening. My grandmother was there too, sitting with Emma in the living room while we adults gathered in the kitchen for what promised to be an incredibly difficult conversation. My parents looked completely shell-shocked when Sarah and I walked in. My mother had obviously been crying extensively, and my father looked like he had aged a decade overnight. They both started talking simultaneously when I entered the kitchen. We had no idea. If we'd known, we can't believe she would. I held up my hand to silence them. "I told you she was lying," I said firmly. "I begged you to check the bank statements. I showed you my own accounts. You chose not to believe me." My father stared down at his hands, unable to meet my gaze. "We were wrong," he admitted quietly. "Completely wrong." I waited for more, for an actual apology, for some acknowledgement of the tremendous harm they had caused, but nothing further came. Instead, my mother said, "But you have to understand, the evidence looked so real." "No," I cut her off immediately. "I don't have to understand anything. What I understand is that you threw me out with 2 hours' notice during my final semester of medical school. What I understand is that you blocked my number and email so I couldn't even defend myself. What I understand is that you believe the worst about me without any investigation whatsoever." My father looked up, his expression pained. "We made a mistake," he said weakly. "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. "What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, multiple choices actually. And those choices showed me exactly where I stand with you." Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, offering silent support and strength. "What do you want us to say?" my mother asked, tears streaming down her face. "We're sorry. We were wrong. What more can we do?" I looked at her, suddenly realizing they weren't actually sorry for what they had done to me. They were sorry they had been fooled. They were sorry they looked bad to the extended family now. They were sorry they had been manipulated. But they weren't genuinely remorseful for how they had treated me. "You know what?" I said slowly, maintaining my composure. "There's nothing you can say because this isn't actually about Rachel. Yes, she lied. Yes, she manipulated you. But you chose to believe her without evidence. You chose to throw me out. You chose to cut all contact. Those were your choices, and they showed me exactly who you are as parents." My father's expression hardened. "That's not fair. We were victims of Rachel's lies too." "The difference," I replied, standing up to leave, "is that you had a choice. I didn't. You chose to believe the worst about your son without any proof. What kind of parents do that?" I turned to leave, but my mother grabbed my arm. "What about Emma?" she pleaded. "She needs you." "Don't worry," I assured her coldly. "I'll still see Emma. I'll still take her on weekends. But this changes nothing between us. You haven't actually apologized for what you did to me. You've only expressed regret for being tricked." My father stood up, angrier now. "So that's it? You're just going to cut us off after we admitted we were wrong?" I met his gaze steadily. "Admitting you were wrong isn't the same as apologizing for the harm you caused," I explained quietly. "And even if you did apologize sincerely, that doesn't obligate me to forgive you or pretend everything's okay now. I walked out with Sarah right behind me. We stopped in the living room to say goodbye to Emma and my grandmother, promising to see them that weekend as planned. As we drove home, Sarah asked if I was all right. I wasn't, not really. Having the truth finally come out should have felt vindicating, but mostly I just felt profoundly sad. The next few weeks were chaotic. Rachel had apparently seen Tasha's posts and deleted all her social media accounts. According to my grandmother, she had called my parents in a rage, accusing them of turning everyone against her and threatening to come take Emma away. They responded by filing for emergency guardianship of Emma, using the screenshots as evidence of Rachel's intent to abandon her child. Meanwhile, our wedding plans continued. Sarah and I found a beautiful beachfront venue for the ceremony and reception. Her parents were incredibly supportive, offering to help with expenses and planning. My grandmother was thrilled about the wedding and immediately volunteered to assist with whatever we needed. When it came time to send out invitations, Sarah asked the question I had been dreading. "What about your parents?" I thought long and hard about it and ultimately decided not to invite them. This wasn't about punishment. It was about surrounding ourselves with people who truly loved and supported us on our special day. People who had stood by me when things got tough, not just when it was easy or convenient. I wrote my parents a letter explaining my decision. "I've thought carefully about whether to invite you to the wedding. I've decided that I cannot. This day is about celebrating love and commitment with people who have demonstrated those qualities consistently. While I will continue to maintain a relationship with you for Emma's sake, I'm not ready to pretend we're a happy, reconciled family. The truth is, you hurt me deeply, not just by believing Rachel's lies, but by how quickly and completely you cast me aside, by how little investigation you did before deciding I was guilty, by how you blocked me from defending myself. Those actions showed me where I stand with you, and they can't be undone by Tasha's screenshots. I hope you can respect my decision." The response came swiftly and predictably. My father called, furious. "So this is your revenge? Excluding us from your wedding after we admitted we were wrong?" I remained calm. "It's not revenge. It's a boundary. I'm inviting people who make me feel safe and loved. You don't qualify." "I'm your father," he shouted. "I have the right to be at my son's wedding." "You gave up that right when you threw me out with 2 hours' notice and blocked my number for over a year," I reminded him. My mother got on the phone next, crying about how they had suffered enough and how I was being deliberately cruel by excluding them from this important day. They didn't handle my decision well at all. For weeks afterward, they tried everything: guilt trips, anger, sending other family members to plead their case. But I remained firm. This was one area where I wasn't willing to compromise. Sarah's parents, blessing that they were, offered to hire security for the wedding, just in case my parents decided to show up uninvited. "No one should have to worry about family drama on their wedding day," her mother said kindly.